Hello, and thank you for joining us. Jamaica Votes, the Debates Review. I'm Neville Graham. It's been 90 minutes of arguments and counter-arguments on the social issues, and 6 politicians, Lisa Hanna for the PNP, along with Raymond Pryce and Dr. Dayton Campbell, all pitched in, along with Kamina Johnson-Smith, Floyd Green, and Dr. Christopher Tufton for the JLP. But who was the better team to help us assess the debate on social policies? We're joined in studio by Jovan Johnson, he's senior reporter at the Gleaner, and on Zoom we have Danny Roberts, senior lecturer and head of the Hugh Lawson Shearer Labor Studies Institute, along with Dr. Yonique Campbell, lecturer in public policy and management at the Department of Government at the UMONA. Now, Jovan, who won the debate? No, I know you don't want to answer that question. So we'll throw to our 2 panelists right now to answer that question. Just who won? Danny?
It's very hard to say, quite frankly. It was a very close debate in my mind. There were high points and there were low points. There were 4 things that I was looking for. I was looking for organization and clarity. I was looking for the level of persuasiveness of the arguments, rebuttal and presentation style. I must tell you that the 2 persons who were outstanding for me was Floyd Green from the JLP and Raymond Pryce from the PNP. I particularly like Floyd Green's opening comments and his initial focus, because I think he kept on point. He provided statistical information, and he set the context and provided an argument as to why there ought to be a continuation of the JLP administration. I think that in some of the rebuttals, it descended a little into,
Rank up.
Yeah, and I think that, you see, in a debate like this, I think there are 2 audiences that you're appealing to. One is your base, and I suppose Dayton Campbell was there as what they call the attack dog, and certainly the base would like to see some rancor and some political point scoring. But there are those persons who are still undecided, and obviously the outcome of a debate will make a determination as to which side one would vote for. So I think the highs and the lows, there are high points, low points. They're for me 2 outstanding debaters. Lisa Hanna at presence and command, and I think that augurs well. I think that perhaps the 2 weakest, certainly Johnson Smith for the JLP and Dayton Campbell for the PNP.
We could probably say they didn't turn up. Dr. Campbell?
It's not very often that I agree with somebody when it comes to political debates and assessment, but I must say that I agree to a large extent with Danny. I think some of the debaters were focused more on policy, some of course more so on the politics. I expected a bit more from Tufton. Floyd Green did very well. He tried to provide the facts. He was well prepared. Kamina did not strike me as being well prepared, or she's perhaps not the best debater, because some people, might fall down in that regard.
How about rattled?
Pryce, I think, did really well. I think he struck the right balance between the policies and the politics, trying to appeal to the base, but also speaking to people who probably have not made their minds up. I think Lisa was very good with her opening remarks, but I do agree that perhaps Floyd and Pryce, for me, were the better debaters.
I noticed nobody's taking me on that Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith was rattled. Jovan?
Well, I think you have to. Thanks, Neville. I think it has to be looked at different levels. I mean, Kamina Johnson-Smith doesn't strike you as the kind of as that raw debater, if you will, that person who will go toe to toe. This is not to say she can't be effective, and in large parts of the debate, I felt she was effective because she is quite similar to a Raymond Pryce without the shades and the frills and all of that. Kamina you could see Kamina's strategy, which was to question the achievements of the opposition, the now opposition PNP, which wants to get back into office. And she would point a lot as well, which was perhaps the strategy of the general government members, to point to what they have achieved. And I think for a government or for a party that's currently in government and wants to retain government, that is important. What is your record of achievement? And I thought that Kamina did very well in a lot of ways to remind, and Floyd did that as well. I mean, Floyd and Kamina were the more participatory, or they participated more in the debate. I think where Kamina was rattled, I felt several questions from Vashon. One on Disabilities Act. Why wasn't that a priority? The question as well on, I believe it was a referendum question as well. The one about removing the Queen as the head of state. And I believe she was also rattled on the question of the shelters. What happened, and Vashon reeled out, when the gender affairs minister would have mentioned these and when they should have come on stream, which were really good questions by my colleague indeed. And Kamina, she provided, and perhaps that's what you're doing as a debate. You're not going to just stand there and not say anything. You're going to try to find some form of response. I think those are particular questions that would have rattled Kamina, but I think in the other respects she would have delivered, I believe.
I'd like to take you to task there, Jovan, because I don't know why you are being so kind to our foreign minister, in that she waffled, certainly, on the question of the Disabilities Act and why it was not a priority for this government. She didn't answer the question at all.
I mean, obviously there were straightforward questions, and she did not give direct responses, of course, to them. Perhaps not prepared for it, and not being able to just say, look, it wasn't just a priority. She's not going to say it wasn't a priority. She's going to try her best to find a way to soften the blow and to say that, look, we were doing these other things, but I would agree with you. Directly, the questions were not answered in the way in which you'd expect. She's not going to say it wasn't a priority, but you'd also want to hear what were there other things we did not know about. But of course, if you're talking about your agenda and the protection of the marginalized and vulnerable communities, then this would have been a sort of a blot on your record of achievement.
Danny, you sounded as if you were cheering on the men in the debate, more in the form of Raymond Pryce and Floyd Green. No mention of the women in how they performed in your assessment.
No, I did say that Lisa did well and had a command and a presence in the debate. And she certainly began very well in terms of our opening statement. But, the point that was made earlier about Tufton, I suppose performing below what we would have expected. I think there's a certain expectation as to how we expect a Chris Tufton to perform. And he certainly didn't command the stage as one would have expected. And certainly in the debates of this nature, and not everybody is a good debater. I mean, something you perhaps have to train for and have some experience in. But certainly, the persuasiveness of a debate is injure what Aristotle calls the persuasion triad, the ethos, logos, and pathos. That is to say, we have to look at how sincere and appealing was the argument. Is there any truth to it? Is there logic behind the argument? Was it a logical argument was set out? And did it appeal to one's emotions? And I think that the point that was made that Raymond Pryce perhaps best was able to balance both the politics and the policies in terms of his presentation. As Floyd Green would have appealed to the emotion, provided some logic to his argument, and came across quite sincere.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, and because certainly from both sides, there were strengths and weaknesses. There were some who performed good at times and bad at others. It was kind of difficult to, certainly for me to, overall come up with a very clear winner.
To say hands down who it is.
Certainly the public would have been treated to have a reasonably good debate. And I'm not sure to what extent it would have persuaded anybody, one way or the other, to vote for one or the other political party, but that's left to be seen.
You know what, Dr. Campbell, you're the policy specialist here. I'd certainly like to hear from you. Did the policy come out? Who won the debate in terms of carrying policy that was either enacted or to be enacted in terms of a wish list?
I think the two sides made an attempt. For the most part, the PNP focused on the policies of the past, clearly, what they had done, and they emphasized that the JLP was actually carrying out the policies developed under the previous administration. So you had quite a bit of back and forth, with the JLP saying, this is what we have been doing, this is what we have implemented, and Floyd trying to bring forth the statistics, whether around crime. They talked about water, access to water. They talked about the public health system. And I think Dayton he attempted to shed some light on some of the policy issues in the public health system. And I was expecting that Tufton would have been a bit more assertive, a bit more forceful, given that he's now presiding over perhaps one of the biggest public crises that we've seen in quite a long time. I think his confidence may have been shaken to some extent by
in that he was distracted.
Perhaps because the COVID crisis has not.
It might have been more than that. It might have been more than that. Let me ask this though, and I'd like you both to think about this while Jovan gives me that answer. What for you, Jovan, were the moments of the debate? Where can you think of those times that we can say, yes, we remember this in the debate?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, and I believe one of our panelists, either Mr. Roberts or Dr. Yonique Campbell, sorry, would have alluded to these or mentioned them explicitly. Certainly, Dayton Campbell, including the name of Jody and Farron's name in the debate, which really, when you think of the question he was answering and what was the clear relationship, and furthermore, why would you drag such a situation that really upset the country, and certainly the trauma and the tragedy that's associated with Miss Farron's name, the case, we all know what happened, and to have brought that into the debate in a political debate, essentially to score political points.
So that for you was a low point then?
It was a very low point. It was a very low point that added nothing. And her name should not have been there, I believe. If there's a particular kind of decency that you want to also maintain and to exude, and some things must be off limits. And in this case, that was one of the clear ones that should have been off limit. I mean, there were several of them. I mean, there was Floyd Green's response to the 18 years in respect of education, and there was I think it was Lisa Hanna was talking about she went to school during that period, the 18 and a half consecutive years of education of PNP administration up to 2007, I believe, and followed up was Floyd Green, who said, look, I went to school in that time, and he spoke about the troubles and the difficulties in terms of accessing education, guarantor students' loan problems, and so on. Those were some very, very good rebuttals. I believe there was also the one involving Raymond Pryce when he first introduced the 55 months, and that became sort of a motive throughout the debate, the constant reference to 55 months, and he would have done very well in respect of the Disability Act when he was rebutting what Kamina sort of, had difficulty responding to as well.
I don't hear anybody speaking about the time when Lisa Hanna said, as Foreign Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith was spending too much time on the airplane. Let's not go there.
Well, and tied to that, I believe it was Floyd who talked about the pain, was it the painful government, the painful party, or I think he used I can't remember it right now. Well, that was also another moment,
yes,
of course.
That Danny, high moment, low moment for you?
Yeah, well, there are 2 points. One, when Floyd Green, in setting out what the JLP has done in the 4.5 years, and acknowledging that there's still work to be done, but they have made an advance. Contextualize that against the background of the PNP's 23 years, 18 unbroken years, and an additional 5 years, and said, well, after 23 years, you can't be now complaining about something that you had 23 years to do and have not done anything. And we have been able to move the needle, albeit not far enough, but give us another term. And the other high point was when Raymond Pryce was responding to the state of emergencies. And he said that the focus of the JLP has been more on social control rather than social investment. Right? And I think that was a good point. But yeah, so there are some high points in that.
Dr. Campbell?
Well, I do expect these political debates to be a bit controversial. So am I surprised? I would say no. The Jodian Ferron case could have come up in a different way. If it is going to be thrown out there, it cannot just be, to score political points. Yeah. Because it is indeed an important issue. And it has been in the public domain. So if it is that it was actually used to say, how can we better advance the public health system? How do we deal with the current challenges that actually culminated in that unfortunate incident, if you will? Then I perhaps, would have understood why it would come up perhaps in a political debate. Most of the memorable moments came from Raymond for me and from Floyd. And there's a point when I think Kamina said that the PNP, when she got a little bit partisan, I think she talked about the PNP being a propaganda machine or something. That was perhaps a low point as well. I was a little bit, I'm not, again, I was not really taken aback, but that would have been perhaps a low point in the debate as well for me. But certainly some good issues as well. There were attempts to deal with the states of emergency, but I think by and large what we saw were the debaters trying to stick to the issues that they knew more about. So I think they did not sufficiently take on some of the issues. But I thought that Raymond showed broad knowledge, and to some extent Lisa as well, that they had when they talked about the liberalization of the telecom sector and so on. They did, show, knowledge outside of their immediate portfolios.
I know, Dr. Campbell, you'd spoken about.
And there's a good point, which was very good with Raymond acknowledged the point that I think Kamina made about electric cars. Use of,
Yes,
that was a good thing, and then he moved on from there. Well, that was a high point.
Yeah. Let me just correct. I think Floyd was saying the Pipeline National Party. I think that's the reference he was trying to go. Just to correct what I had said earlier. I know, Dr. Campbell, you had said that, you know, the issue of policy and issues came out. And I know perhaps for a political debate, you don't look to a political debate to get serious policy, wonky kind of issues, right? But I also try to get a sense of the sort of philosophical direction that either party was trying to steer the country, especially amid the COVID crisis. And I felt that obviously the JLP is going to be hammering and pushing its achievement, and that was obviously a thread throughout the debate. I mean, and why not? Of course, you are saying we have done this, and just, you know, we allow us to continue to do this if we're reaping these kinds of results. For the PNP, I don't think the articulation. So in sort of silos, you got some of what we will do, and I think you got that earlier on from Lisa in some respects, certainly about education and in terms of the community and roads and so on. But I did not get a sort of maybe not a full-on coherent direction per se. You know, it was more. It's sort of more like what we've achieved, and your term is sort of removed from the current voting base or voting population.
Just before you come in, Danny, didn't you see those moments, Jovan, where the PNP, especially through Lisa and to some extent Raymond Pryce, kept referring to their manifesto to say it is a part of a commitment? Didn't they bring that out?
But you wanted a little bit more detail. I don't want to reiterate the manifesto. Obviously, the debate and the timing in which you have to answer the question doesn't allow you for any expansive thought. But I wanted a little bit more, less of what you're not the government who's just finishing a term. You're the government whose term was 4 or 5 years ago almost. So you have to now not only remind us or try to remind us of something that is a little bit removed, certainly 18 years or so, but what you want is to capture the imagination of people. What can we do, or what can we do differently?
Sure.
And you didn't get a lot of that, I think.
Yeah, so I think Lisa would have come the closest to providing a philosophical underpinning for the policies that the PNP would enunciate and pursue. Mm-hmm. And certainly she made on a couple of occasions to connect that as far back as Norman Manley's policy, to show the consistency in the PNP's vision and philosophy of putting people first. And I think certainly in one of our rebuttal, I think it was, that she emphasized the point that this is a party that cares for the people, that deals with things wholesomely and not focusing on only a small section of the population. So she attempted to provide a kind of a philosophical framework with in a historical context. But I suppose it's a debate and it wasn't sufficient time to be able to bring that out and elaborate on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so debate is done. The debate is done. And we are looking towards Thursday for the next debate. Can this debate be topped, Dr. Campbell?
Indeed, the most important debate is perhaps going to be the debate around the economy, because we've heard all the promises, but where is the money going to come from in a COVID or a post-COVID dispensation? And that really is going to be the most difficult question to answer, right? Because none of the debaters tonight admitted that their promises will to a large extent be determined, or their ability to carry out the promises will be dependent on what really happens with the economy. And I also noticed that at no point did the name of the leader of the opposition in tonight's debate, the name of the leader of the opposition was never mentioned. Yes, I don't know if that was deliberate.
It was
deliberate. But no,
it was mentioned.
Oh, it was mentioned.
Yes, but the Prime Minister was mentioned more often.
Right, and maybe we can understand because that's the ruling party. Right. Okay, so I'm sorry, I missed that one.
No, I think it's more than the ruling party. I think it really has to do with the fact that both the favorability rating of the Prime Minister, the leader of the JLP, is a pull factor for the
Right.
JLP. And I mean, if you
And
go by the
therefore,
polls,
they were
the
used
converse
to
is true for the PNP.
I
So,
agree.
yes.
And I expected a little bit more from the PNP in terms of trying to appeal to younger Jamaicans, because they've been criticized over and over again that they've not been able to appeal sufficiently. And I saw the JLP talking about the student loan issue and so on. So the housing issue. So perhaps I expected more, because Lisa is relatable, Raymond Pryce is very relatable as well. But I think the next two debates are going to be very, very interesting. And I think Jamaicans are going to be more interested perhaps in the last debate, which is the leadership debate.
Right.
I think that is going to get everybody really, really, really excited. And
Final comments, Danny. Can it be topped? Can it be topped?
Well, I think so, because Thursday is going to be a very, very interesting debate. I think we have two quality candidates, both the PNP and the JLP, who have their facts and their information articulate and persuasive. So I think that it's going to be a very interesting debate on Thursday, and I'm really looking forward to it. I have great respect for both Golden and Dr. Clark, Mark Golden and Dr. Clark, and therefore I expect much from them. I think that they are good quality debaters in and of themselves, and so therefore expect it's likely to be topped.
I see Jovan Johnson licking his chops right now because he's looking forward to the next two debates. Jovan, final comment.
As long as they don't keep it, as long as they keep it at a level where the public and people can follow, because these are two people who, when you listen to them sometimes in Parliament and you watch even their other parliamentary colleagues listening on, they're tuning out. Not necessarily because they're bored. Well, perhaps they're probably bored or so on, but largely because the details and the concepts, the economic and financial concepts that are being discussed are just way over the head, and that may be so on Thursday. But certainly, obviously, both people are very bright, respected persons who are in command of their portfolios, and so it will be close. Interestingly, what you will have is a finance minister who is in charge of playing a role in managing a crisis, and then you'll have an opposition spokesperson on finance who will refer to the period of the IMF when he would have been in the cabinet of the administration of Simpson Miller, and the successes they would have had from that. So you will have very interesting points of references in that debate, which will be we'll all be looking forward to that.
Well, as they say, very interesting, and that's all the time we have for Jamaica Votes, the debates review. Thanks very much to our panelists, senior Gleaner reporter Jovan Johnson. He was in studio with us. And on Zoom, we had Danny Roberts, senior lecturer and head of the Hugh Lawson Shearer Labor Studies Institute. And we also had Dr. Yonique Campbell, lecturer in public policy and management at the Department of Government at the UMONA. Join us again on Thursday. After the second debate, we'll be discussing finance and the economy. Keep watching. I'm Neville Graham. Stay tuned.